Welcome to Officially Casually, 2 digits, baby. The episode that, going back to the start, it's not working. So we just wanted to reminisce. Oh my God, do you remember the good old days when we just were extra bad at this? I love it.
we improved a lot. So for the listeners, this is the episode 10 of Officially Casually, which you should, I think, know when you already clicked on it and listened to it, because it's the title of the episode. And your hosts, is it hosts? Do you say hosts?
The host, the people talking, the random guys that we get every time, the same ones.
Yeah, it's for once. This is like me, Darko from Austria, 6:40 now in the morning.
Oh shit!
This is Rafa, currently in Puerto Rico, and it is 12:45 midnight for me.
And this is Edward. It's 12:45 p.m. in China. This is how we do. Thank God for the internet.
Yeah, so once a week we just have a phone call and talk about random stuff, and I fucking love it. Guys, I just fucking love it, because we talked quickly on WhatsApp. We have a WhatsApp group, right? Where we talked about quickly. Basically, people usually go into a niche and try to grow out, they decide for one thing and then they go full force into it. And we are just like all over the place, like all over the place, man. And it's the greatest joy.
Yeah,
I mean, I wonder if there's a niche, I wonder if there's like a niche really that we are falling into and we just don't even know it, that's kind of my curious question.
The niche of people who talk about random stuff.
Yeah,
I think maybe,
so too.
Maybe.
Because to be honest, I thought about this yesterday, when we talked quickly about affiliate marketing. So for the people who are listening, affiliate marketing is basically you, how to call it? Fuck you. Is it? Do you say advertise?
No, you don't fuck.
How can I explain affiliate marketing?
I would say you kind of like partner up with
Right.
someone who's selling something or someone who's trying to sell something, and maybe like the short way of explaining is that you get a special link that if someone uses that link and buys something, you get some kind of benefit from it, or some like piece of the sale or something like that.
Yeah, right. So we might do that or we're probably gonna do that in the future. So we're not gonna do any ads or sponsors or shit in the episode, but sometimes we're gonna talk about products and then things that we've used or we've read, books that we've read, whatever. And then I'm gonna provide the link. Sometimes it's gonna be affiliate link, which means it's gonna lead you maybe to Amazon, and then we're gonna earn a little commission if you use the link to buy the thing. But if you decide not to do that, you can also go on Google and search for the product itself. It doesn't really matter. It's just like a nice thing for us, for a little bit. We collect a little money for gift cards so that we can buy later on better equipped or something like that. And so it's a nice help if you use the link. If not, it doesn't really matter. But what we really talked about is actually that what you said, Rafa, and I really liked it, that usually people have a product and then they do a podcast around it to market that thing, and we are like all over.
Yeah, that's kind of like a different, right? Like that's more focused affiliate marketing. Are you there, Darko?
Yeah, I'm listening.
I think he's out.
So I guess like the kind of adding up to the idea that Darko was going into is that a lot of so something that we decided really early on when we started this was we didn't want to do ads, we didn't want to do sponsors, and the reason for that is that we want this to be like a conversation of us kind of like sitting down every week, going through ideas, debating ideas, and even challenging our own ideas and each other's ideas. And we felt that by getting into the world of ads and sponsors and all that, then we're kind of putting ourselves in a position in which we need to censor ourselves in favor of someone else's product or something like that. Um, and and so then when kind of like Darko brought up the idea of, hey, maybe we can do affiliate marketing. What do you guys think? We thought it would be like a good idea because we're still holding true to that original kind of like thought or that original concern, because we're essentially doing it backwards. Because generally when you do affiliate marketing, you're trying to push your products down, so you talk about the products because you're trying to sell them. And here what we're kind of doing is we're talking about stuff because it's relevant to us during the conversation, or it's relevant to us because it's it's been part of our journey or our growth. And from there, then we can say, oh, here's, if you like the book that we were talking about, then here's a link to it, and then you can go buy it if you want. Or you, like Darko said, you don't have to buy it from where we're saying. You can if you just want to like have the link as a referral, and then get it at your local bookstore or whatever. If it's a book, then that's fine too. It's not like we're also saying that you should do what we're saying. Um,
Yeah, the idea with sponsors is that for a moment I was like, sponsors are right? Like we just endorse things that we really like, that we actually use every day. And I feel like that's how most people go into sponsorships and stuff like that. Maybe, probably, hopefully, but really, actually, it creates mental strain anyways to be like, oh right,
mm-hmm.
this thing is making us money, so maybe I shouldn't say that, even if I love it, or maybe everything I say is kind of tinted with that feeling, with that notion that it makes me money, that it kind of sustains me or gives me wealth, and that taints the entire thing. So never mind, we don't need sponsors, we don't need, and affiliate links is just like, hey, we mention things. If you get them through us, great. If not, then we're still gonna mention things. That said, Power of Now, The Secret, what else? Nike shoes.
I'm gonna list them all. I love Nike shoes, man.
I'll say
Oh,
Nike
man.
shoes again, just so we can get 2 pairs.
Yeah. But again, like, the sponsor stuff, man. As you said, I feel like if we would do that, as you said, like with the censoring, we probably wouldn't be able to say everything, because let's say we talk about sponsor stuff, and then for example, let's say Nike. Right now we talked about Nike, right? I love Nike, and maybe Edward loves Converse, and then Rafa loves Adidas, and then we get sponsorship of Nike. Then suddenly we are not maybe allowed to talk about the Adidas or the Converse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy.
so that
That
kind of,
level is crazy.
I think it would work like that, right? I mean, you get sponsored by Nike, then you shouldn't talk about other shoes.
Well, yeah, and it goes even further, because if you get into a topic that's spicy, and then people are like, "Oh, these guys spoke about," I don't know what would be like really spicy in my mind right now, then any of those guys could be like, "Oh, fuck you, then we're not gonna sponsor you anymore." And then it's like, it kind of looks, it probably puts us like in a really bad or awkward situation to be on. I
Yeah.
feel in general. Even if we don't mind that they leave, it's still, it's like no one wants to be the kid in the playground who doesn't get picked for the team, or who gets kicked out of the team. So I feel like it's kind of like that feeling.
That's a nice way to put it. And I think sponsorship and advertisement, I think it works for people who have really like one niche. If one guy is like really into Nike and his and the whole Nike industry thing, then I think it actually makes sense, for him, like, get sponsors of Nike and advertising for Nike, because he's just like a Nike nerd. But I think in our case, it's just very hard to pinpoint it, even because we don't really have a niche. So even if you would try to do like sponsorship and advertisement, I would be like not practical, because we really jump around to every shit. So, but anyways, it's I don't like it. So that's actually the main reason we don't do it, because we just don't like it.
I agree with that. Anyway, so that was starting the episode. That's how that kind of went.
Yeah.
Actually, Darko, while you were connecting, Rafa and I were having a go at the video he sent on the group chat, the one about the Unabomber and the futurism.
I didn't watch that yet.
Did we lose you again, Darko?
You don't worry about me jumping in and out. The internet, also yesterday it fucked me a little bit up. You just keep on talking with you. I'm just gonna jump in and out of the of the call.
We should leave like cryptic messages, so when you're editing, you're like, "What the fuck is all of this?"
If you put them all together, you will know where the Illuminati. Oh,
so
Illuminati,
like the song it is sent, Illuminati. Da, da, da.
You've got to take control.
Oh, that was fucking deep, but it's funny. I just yesterday I'm going through the things I'm gonna throw away or give away, and I found the book of Dan Brown, Illuminati. That's one of the only fantasy books or like non-fiction or fiction books I have. And I remember, man, this book is fucking great. I'm gonna provide the link in the episode notes. But this is
Sorry, I had to say it.
I'm gonna say though, are you sure it is fiction?
Oh shit! Are you sure? Because
that's a good
sounds
question,
like a real
man.
name to me.
Well, fuck, I don't know. Did you ever read that book?
No, I did not.
There's like a movie out, but the movie is shit. The movie is just fucking shit compared to the book. The book is fucking awesome, man. I think it's fiction because they talk about, like, I don't want to spoiler here. I don't want to spoiler. I don't want to do that, man. But they talk about stuff that's kind of not real, but maybe it is. I'm actually not sure. No, I'm not sure. Who knows what's fiction, what's not fiction? Who knows?
Because I feel like in general, like I always wonder that, like I see something and it's like sci-fi or something like that, and it's like all kinds of crazy, and then they're like, but it's fiction, and I'm like, but is it really? Like, how could you be sure? Like, how could you confirm that that maybe something crazy as like the Star Wars universe isn't something that already happened, and then somehow people dreamt it, and then from there they got the idea, and then they made kind of like their own interpretation of that story. But who knows if that stuff happened? Because we wouldn't.
Because it didn't.
Yeah, just because it doesn't make sense in maybe like our current day and age, who knows? There's a reason why we came up with it without having something else to as reference. So who knows?
You know what's the craziest part about all the fiction stories that we have? That nobody is like really. I mean, there's like a bunch of people who are fans of it. I mean, I guess the people who are not fans of it, maybe. I think the people who are not fans are not interested at all. But the fans are just not questioning the Star Wars universe. It just is what it is. It is what it is, right? And and the and our Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, all those different kind of fiction stories. Very like, it would be fucking. You know what I love about Earth, our universe? They basically. So when we go to Westeros, right? It's Khaleesi and Jon Snow, etc. It's
so to add something to this, like,
yeah.
You said that maybe things that happen, but maybe things that haven't happened yet, right? Like you look at a lot of these stories about the future written 20 years ago and 30 years ago, and you know how many of those things are like
Mm-hmm.
reality now.
Yeah.
That's kind of the main point that I go to, and then there's also kind of the beauty of it. Like there's this quote like we wanted flying cars, instead we got like 150 characters or some shit like that, and it's like Twitter and social media and all these things, we never actually wrote about them in such a direct way as we write about like flying cars and hoverboards and jetpacks, but they are, you know, from a certain point of view, more real than these other things. I mean, they are here, and at the same time, they are more valuable. You know, like they are like arguably more important technologies than, I don't know, like a hoverboard. I know that
Yeah.
might hurt you a little bit.
And you know, and speaking to that, we have all these kind of like stories that in the future, which is for some of them the present, where we're gonna have like flying cars. But if you really think about it, do you want flying cars? Would you really want vehicles like pieces, chunks of metal that size, just swiffing around everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Like does it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like when you really think about it, when you really think about like how messy cars are and all the stuff that happens with them, you know, it it would be an actually like a really fucking terrifying future, and one where, you know, we would go from the world we have today and suddenly we would have flying cars. Because not only,
Everywhere,
yeah,
just populating this the air.
yeah, because not even if you're in a building, you're safe. In fact, if you're in a building, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably you probably have more chance of getting fucked. So so
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
like, what do you do now? Like, it's
Yeah, and even if you look at now where we are, the idea of just transportation, like we might not even have drivable cars in within like a few decades, you know, and then there might be like less cars, so there might be more space on land to just have like, I don't know. I saw this TED talk about, and this guy suggested something like a train that detach into little pods that would take you to different places. So it would be like a train that detach into little cars that would take you places, but it's all self-driving, you know. And like, what would be the point of having flying cars if we have like such what's the word, such
efficient
efficient, yes,
transportation.
exactly,
Yeah.
such efficient transportation that just takes us everywhere without effort from us almost, and it takes like 10% of the space in earth or whatever.
Because it's
uh,
cool. Because somehow we
because it's cool.
you know, I'm gonna say though, if we are, if we're, because I think we're kind of touching on the line that, you know, maybe in some parallel universe, they, their future, the movies of their future had Twitter but didn't come up with flying cars, and then
And
flying cars
flying
is what
cars.
actually happened. I would
Uh-huh,
imagine
uh-huh, uh-huh.
they would regard flying cars in many ways similar to how we regard social media, or and all those things that we're now like, oh shit, all these things are the bane of all evil. And for that other universe, all this like chaos from all the cars flying around, it would be probably like really fucking terrifying. So maybe, you know, they don't have Twitter and all and social media, but they're like, holy shit, cars suck. Like, cars are destroying society, you know.
Yes, just cars destroy society. They took all our jobs.
And
Oh shit! I love that sentence. Uh, yeah, but I love that picture. You know, instead of being like Twitter in the back of our mind, it's just cars zooming everywhere. You
yeah,
know, always this
Yeah.
constant.
people sleeping under their beds and under tables and all that. Just people like terrified of
But now,
cars.
Of cars just falling from the sky or being crazy. Where will all these people be going though that they need? flying cars, right? Like it changes everything when you think about it.
That's a good point. Yeah, because if you can only enter buildings from the bottom, from the street level, like
Not
what?
anymore, you don't, I suppose. So actually think about that. So if you're flying and then you enter buildings not from the bottom because that seems impractical. You could make it. Then maybe the bottom is not such a nice place to be in because it's not where people are transiting all the time. Like
Oh shit!
it's like
Yeah.
it gets like slummy, and then you have like cities that are being built like in the sky, but then like what's the point of having flying cars? I don't understand. I'm confused. And then you create like two layers, so you have the bottom layer and the top layer, and then you have Final Fantasy VII. Like I'm confused now.
Yeah, like the poor people are kind of like at the bottom, and then the rich
Yes,
people don't even like touch the bottom. That's dangerous. That's where the
that's
pieces of
dangerous.
the cars like that didn't get maintenance fall in, and all these things. And
Falling.
but
So it's like Mad Max
yeah,
down there
yeah,
with
exactly.
pieces of flying cars.
Can you imagine like the bottom is Mad Max, but then the top is like a really like futuristic city? It just like
Ridiculous.
day and night change.
That sounds really fucking cool, to be honest. Sounds really cool in a fucked up kind of way.
Yeah, did you guys
Then
ever
you
watch?
could like go to. Come back.
Did, did you guys ever watch The Fifth Element?
Shit, it's really bad.
Did we ever watch? And then suspense.
The Fifth Element.
For some reason, when you laugh, it comes true, but when you try to talk, it don't. God damn it.
The Fifth Element. The Fifth Element. Did you watch
Fifth
The Fifth
Element.
Element?
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it actually just like a month ago. for
Darko's
the
like
first
fifth
time.
element, fifth element, fifth element, fifth element.
Like he's trying to say it, tell us something,
Oh fuck.
Element.
So, is it so bad, the
I've
connection?
I've not seen Fifth Element, but yes,
No
Darko, it is hard to
way.
understand what you're saying, especially because it cuts out
Fuck.
at the worst moment.
Episode number 10. 10 out of 10. There you go, you're back.
Man, Rafa, Rafa, please.
So I
What?
don't know. I don't know if that's going to transfer when you put all the audios together. But essentially, what happened was that I was like, we can't hear you, but it goes off in the most like opportune moments. And right when I was saying that, you were quiet the whole time, and then the only thing we heard from you was "fuck," and then you were gone.
You sounded like in one of the beaten up games from Sega Genesis and Super Nintendo. You sounded like when you beat one of the guys up and then they die. That's how you sounded, and then you were gone. Like Golden Axe, my favorite Sega Genesis game with voice acting.
Fifth
Oh,
element,
man.
fifth element,
Actually,
fifth element.
That's out
Fuck.
Maybe you shouldn't talk about that.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Okay, you're back.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun editing this episode. That's.
No shit.
It's gonna be like patchwork, stitching things together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh shit. Okay. So man, Fifth Element.
I need to sit down because my stomach is like hurting.
You standing? You stand.
Yeah.
I'm laying.
I think you sound excellent now.
Guys, what's your body position? I'm just curious. I'm laying on my little couch.
Now I'm sitting, but now I feel self-conscious because you asked, so now I'm standing again.
I'm just sitting on a little office chair I have over here. My place.
Yeah, so it's so I just noticed because it's funny because all of three of us have like different body positions. Usually I sit, but today I'm just laying there and just listening to you guys. It's more like I feel like in a therapy session, laying in the couch and just listening to you guys.
That's what it looks like in my mind. So how does that make you feel, Darko?
Comfortable
Fifth
actually.
element.
Fifth element. Fifth element.
Fuck.
Shit.
I saw it, but I didn't understand it. Probably because I didn't watch the first 4 elements.
Man, it's such a good movie. It's such a good movie, man. So like, I don't know if people. I hope people who listening have watched the movie. If not, I'm gonna provide the link to the movie or to the DVD box. DVD box set. Oh shit.
So
Yeah.
smash
Okay.
that link.
Anyways, like I just thought because it's all to place in the future. I thought you watched it and it would be perfect with the topic. But because you haven't watched it, you should watch it though. Let's just keep on to the next one.
On to the next. So why you? So Darko, now that we have you here, what do you think about futurism and the Unibomber? Did you get to see the video that Rafa posted?
No, I did not watch it, man. Can you walk me through it quickly? I might be nice for the listeners too.
Yeah, so
yeah, of course.
it was and help me out here, Edward, because I think there were some things that I didn't get that you did get. But essentially, I don't know exactly what the Unabomber did, but I've heard stuff about him. And I think it was this guy in the U.S. that he essentially like mailed bombs to people. So he was like a terrorist. But essentially, part of one of his requests when the thing was going on was that I think the New York Times needed to post his manifesto. And in his manifesto, he's talking about his view of the world and how he believes that all these things that we have now that are occupying our attention, what they're doing is they're essentially like holding us back. That what humanity needs is to go back to that like primal life of when every moment you're kind of like fending off or trying to survive, because that's using everything, every one of your skills to problem solve your way through existence. That every moment is almost like a struggle that continues to push you. So essentially what he believes is that our, instead of us like putting so much attention in like looking at planets and how planets behave and sciences and physics and all these things, those things aren't helping us become happier. That what we need to go back is to our origins. And so he believed that the way in which we would go back to that was to send a bunch of bombs and then fuck up things so bad that you would have to end up back there somehow.
Yeah.
I understand his thought process of like fucking everything up, that basically we have to start from new again, but it's not gonna stop humans because we're gonna we're gonna do this stuff anyways, the technology whatever, because man, we are just here's the thing, we are so many people and everyone is so different, different circumstances, different environment shaped us. So everybody's interested in different things, right? And then we explore this, and man, just look at space. Just look at space, man. Look at when I see the stars at night, I'm just fucking dazzled by it. If it's a beautiful night sky, right? I understand there are some people out there who like, man, I want to know what's beyond Earth, what's beyond this. How far can we look? How far? And I don't think it's bad, like that all these things are grabbing our attention, and I don't think it's a bad thing, because it grabs our attention, people go into different paths. and
Mm-hmm.
we also not. If we would all be fighting for survival, we would fuck each other up on a daily basis. I mean, we're doing it already, but on a much bigger
Yeah,
scale.
that's where one of the hosts landed, where he was essentially saying, like, I believe, or he's saying that he believes that technology and all this stuff that's happening with technology, for example, is evolution. That we have moved into a step of evolution in which it's no longer defined by natural selection in the like bare sense of that, but it's now defined by the evolution of our technology. And
Mm.
he that essentially what we're doing is nature, that we're not. And another way to kind of like slice that is that even if you went back to like caveman days, eventually you realize that if you make the axe this other way, you can now hunt better. And then you make another improvement, and then you can hunt better. And then you make
Mm-hmm.
another improvement, and now you can like make a farm. And then you make, so as bare as you might get, you would have to also turn everyone into a vegetable or something in order for to like really halt progress. But then what would
Uh-huh.
what would those beings do if they're if they're veggies?
To and what would happiness matter to them? This happiness that we're talking about, like they're just veggies, then I mean
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's complete bliss, but like what is that in our scope of how we see the world? Just someone just being like a veggie there. I mean, we look at a tree, right? And sometimes we go, wow, that tree is so nice and calm, and it's just there and it's alive, right? That's what we've learned, that plants are alive, right? I think
Hmm.
Yes.
so, and it's so serene, but like we're not trees. That's one thing. So we can't really see. That's why we call it vegetable. The vegetables are not alive then. Actually, I wanted to bring something, because when Darko was saying, like he said, like, yeah, you destroy everything, but humans, will be back. And Rafa was talking about this too, like create technology again, and it makes me feel like, and I've heard this idea at different moments, but like technology, like is are we at its mercy? Does technology just uses us to create itself? And I think they also touch this, because to a certain degree, like, why do we have to hunt better if we have enough? Like, why do we have to create these tools that make things better, or create progress, when really we could live probably billions of years just doing like the bare minimum? And it's just human progress, but where does this come from, right? Like, what is this instinct that we have that makes us want to create progress or to instill it? And that's an interesting question,
Mm.
to me.
I don't.
I
To be
think
honest, I don't.
go for it.
Yeah, I just want to say I don't think, to be honest, that we are after progress itself. I think, like, now for my thing, why would I do, like, research technology and all this stuff? In my case, it would be the curiosity. I would be like, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what happens if I do this? What happens if I put this, like, cables together? Or like, what happens if I program the software like that? And then you imagine things that it could do, and then you try to build it, and it gives you some sense of like, yeah, I did something really fucking cool. Or let how Rafa said, because like flying cars are also cool, right? I, and I like, as mentioned, like, I think progress is more like a side effect, because progress itself, I think it just, like, let's say martial arts training, all this stuff, I'm not really after the progress, I'm after the training. I love the training, I love the movements, and what happens is, by me doing it, like, a couple times in a week, I progress. And like, it's just like, the more I progress, the more I'm able to learn new things, so, and do this stuff again, and it never gets boring. So I'm not sure if it's entirely after progress. That was one. That's the point I tried to make here.
And I wonder if um maybe part of the issue is this idea of progress. That maybe what's really happening, and maybe the reason we're having so much conflict with this, is that there is no progress, that we're just doing stuff that is getting us somewhere, but progress has like this almost like it's almost implying that we're moving in a direction that it must be forward, or must be like some kind of ascension, so it must be some kind of betterment. But maybe we're just,
Measurable.
yeah, but maybe we're just moving. Maybe we're just doing stuff because it's kind of interesting to us, and to some level or the other, and we're just moving. We're just being a part of nature, or being beings of nature with curiosity to try things out and do things differently. Because I'm also trying to like, I would imagine, that when I think one of like the most like famous examples of evolution is like, if there's two bears that are born in like Antarctica, and one of them is white and the other one's brown, then the brown one might have a lot more trouble finding food, so then it won't probably like be able to find wouldn't be able to survive, and then natural selection picks the white bear. But what if, shit, I forgot the point that I was going to.
I, I was just thinking it must be like shitty living to be born a brown bear in Antarctica. Really, like shit.
Yeah.
Talk about being dealt a crappy hand.
Why would it happen to you? And like, do you think it happens?
I got into the example, but then I completely forgot like why I went into the topic. So I guess it kind of.
You'll get there.
Oh,
Yeah,
I guess kind of where I was going is that, for the the white bear doesn't look back and it's like, oh shit, we just progressed, we just moved the species forward. I just started a new species of white bears. Nature just continues doing its thing. So it's us that we have this maybe like belief that we are somehow moving things forward, when maybe we're just parts of nature, and we're just doing our thing. We're just being curious beings that we are.
Yeah, and we also might be just a stepping stone, like let's say we are building up on that the human race is building up on all the species that came before us.
Mm-hmm.
And we might just be another stepping stone for the next species, and that might be that the next species is just gonna be based on instead of biology on technology.
Shit, that's such a cool idea.
We're just a stepping stone in evolution for them, and then who knows what's gonna come after them? Maybe a hybrid. Maybe universe is gonna be like, it's not sufficient enough. Maybe we need something that's a little bit biologically in there, and then it's like a hybrid, or more. Maybe afterwards, the next species is gonna be like, we actually don't need a physical body anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We like and just like whatever consciousness or whatever you want to call it, an astral projection. I don't know, something like that, and species is gonna be pure energy.
I like that
Who
idea.
knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that humans, we are special. We're definitely special, but I don't think we're like that special.
As compared to what?
Yeah, that's
White
the thing,
bears?
because we have no. Yeah, I mean, we're different, right? We fucking, human beings are like fucking amazing, because we basically survive everywhere, even in fucking space. So it's like we're like the most adaptable machine out there yet, and there might be like
That we know of.
that nature itself is not like capable of constructing something more sufficient than us, and then we like maybe the biological end, like maybe we are like the biological, how to call it, peak.
But then, I guess
that
to combine that with your previous point, then I wonder if, nature, like
is
if we,
using us
yeah,
to
exactly.
create technology.
Yeah, exactly. If
Mm-hmm.
if nature, if what, for example, like AI is to us, like if we say that maybe the next species that we're stepping stone for is AI, or like super intelligent robots, maybe the perception that we have of that, that being almost like the pinnacle of human like science and thought and ideas and all these. Maybe that's what we are in the sense of the rest of nature. Maybe that nature or planet Earth or whatever somehow put us here as that pinnacle to see where the pinnacle will lead. But really what it's looking for is seeing like, yeah, so now what are you guys gonna like, how are you guys gonna like extend this paradigm? And then we're like, oh, we're gonna bring AI, but then AI is gonna come up with some other thing that we can't
Yeah.
even conceive, and that's why we need kind of like them to figure it out.
That's very interesting, man.
Actually, and you mentioned something, right? Nature. I feel, because I always been like this as well. When we think nature, we think planet Earth, but you know what? Nature is space. You know, nature could be space, and you know we're just one planet. So maybe in the grand scheme of things, we're just one planet producing one thing, and producing something, and eventually, you know, we'll create like AI, and AI will create something else, and thousands of years will happen, and then we'll realize we were in like a science fair, intergalactic science fair, and everybody just shows what they built, and the best planet gets like a gold ribbon or something, you know. So
Good job making Earth.
yeah, great job. You created a astral projection beams, but Planet Sector 29 created freaking like subconsciousness that moves through stars. So better luck next time.
Or it's like, or it's two kids because they're considered like kids for another reality. So they're smart enough to create us, and then you know there's the kids that kind of like made us, and they're like, oh wow, good job. But did you see that the ones that Johnny made have flying cars? You're sort of destroying the planet and doing all these things. That's okay, you know. That's maybe like a C, but these guys
C minus.
they are doing it with cars. You know, they're actually terrified of cars now. They've developed car phobia.
So the self-conscious cars.
Autophobia.
Ooh, imagine, guys, imagine that, you know, like cars become at one point, you know, they're autonomous, right? They can do whatever they want. Self-aware.
Oh my god. What if we are all just being controlled by self-aware cars, you know? That's the real Illuminati. I mean, there's cars everywhere when you think about it. Oh my god, they could take over in a moment. Never even thought about this.
When Darko started explaining that, I just you know Thomas the train.
Ooh.
Yes.
So what I pictured was a world in which all cars had faces like that, and I was like, "Holy fuck, we're done." You know, there's nothing we can do against that.
Humanity will be extinct within a week, I think.
Darko, maybe you should try to finish your idea before the self-aware cars get to you again.
Yeah, no, that was actually my point. I just wanted to ask you guys what do you think about that idea. Do you think they would take over, like, you know, would they be like, you know what, why should we drive humans around? I want to drive. I just want to drive empty.
Then there's just cars like driving on the road or at beaches, and we have to like deal with them because they're autonomous. So now there's laws that protect them, and you're like, I wanted to go to the park, but there's so many cars there with like loud music and jumping around and making and loitering, and it's just like disgusting.
That must be.
And then they really take your jobs. Oh my god.
But when you said that the first time, you know, cars taking your job, what, you know what I imagined? A car in a how to call it, in a restaurant, and trying to serve you drinks and food with tires, just lifting it, trying to lift it up, you know,
just like. Runs over your table and like the food is on the dash or something, and you thank you,
and it looks like all sad, and it's like sorry, I'm new. I'm new, and it's just like bumping into like all the tables, and
Like
everything's falling
vroom
into the
vroom,
floor.
like vroom vroom vroom
Yeah,
vroom.
the alarm activate. Wee, 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 wee. Sorry, sorry, sorry.
Sorry, my alarm kicks in when I get nervous.
It looks like
And
fuel.
there's somebody in the corner like, this is why I hate cars. Like racist.
Yeah, and do you think that would do like a segregation? Like the cars have their own toilets and all the shit.
Oh yeah, I would imagine then it's
Oh,
also like there's places in which like cars can't get married, and cars and humans cannot like live together, and all those things.
But what if like a human really loves a car and a car really loves a human and they want to be together?
They'll
They
just
have
have to
to
figure it
love.
out. They're gonna have to fight the system like everyone else who have to fight the system for a similar reason
Before
in history.
for a similar reason
Right.
than car human marriage.
Right. Actually, it reminds me now that that it's really the same again, right? There's like a couple of stories out there, and just different. We talked about this in a previous episode. I don't remember which one. It's just different package.
Yeah, I
If,
definitely feel like history loops over itself.
yeah, yeah. What interestingly is like every time we have like and that's also something I thought about. Like a conflict on Earth. Because they happen on a frequent base. They always bring for like a time period some peace,
Mm-hmm.
and then like some progress forward, and then at one point the people kind of like forget that there was conflict, and then they start the conflict again, and like, oh shit, it's actually bad, and at one point realize it's actually really bad, and then we have like time period of peace and progress again. So it's very interesting that this moment of self-destruction of the conflicts. I feel like somehow I don't want to believe it, but I feel like kind of somehow essential to the progress of humans. But I don't want to believe it because I think there are like other ways to progress too without fucking everything up. But the part of destruction, the part of destruction, I feel like I feel always like destruction. You take things apart and then you build it better up again. And then you destroy it again, then you build it up better again. I feel like this is how progress is kind of happening.
And I kind of like to think about the world as almost like a video game. And if you think of these like recurring themes, like one of the themes that I always kind of go back to when I think that history kind of like loops itself over, is how like more in like my parents' time, for a while everyone was freaking out because they were like, oh man, rock and roll is fucking up our children, and they're leading them to drugs and turning them into bad human beings. And then a few years later everyone stopped caring, and then everyone started being like, oh, rap is like turning our kids into like all these like criminals and leading them to drugs and turning them into bad human beings. And then after a while people stop caring again, and then oh, video games are turning our kids into villains, and so it
Mm-hmm.
almost feels like it's the same thing happening over and over and over again, but we're just changing like the themes. So we had the
Mm.
80s, and we had the vibe of the 80s, and all the stuff that happened around that time. But now, like in the day and age that we're at, things are different, but the problems are the same. So it's almost like, maybe going back to what we were saying before, maybe it's like the way that nature is like, oh, let's see how they do in the same situation, but changing things around just a little bit. And now let's see how that goes. And now let's see how that goes after that. Let's just change little detail of that. That in many ways, like the role that rock and roll and rap and video games played, now it's being played by social media.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I can see that.
And rap is like the hottest music right now in United States, and it's as dirty as it's ever been and everything, but nobody cares about
Mm-hmm.
that. Like transcended that.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
used to
Exactly.
it.
So what I think is that like if nature is trying to teach us history, so we can like better ourselves and stuff. like that? Like for what? You know, that's kind of my curiosity. Like,
Well, that's
cause
go for it. Go for it.
no, no, because there's some things that if we go back, I'm thinking back to the science fair thing and the planet building and all that. It's like it's the only way maybe that you can instill into our DNA like things that we can't do or shouldn't do to achieve enlightenment, you know. And it takes generations, and history repeats itself. So it's just like genetically, like maybe it changes us, you know. It's like I've heard it said that women have a lot of like an ancestral pain and stuff like that that comes from like how women have been like subjugated, or yeah, like their roles in society that they've had or that been imposed into them. And that like every I've heard that like every girl carries that, you know. And to me, I find it like hard pressed to believe that it's something that they have it like in their genetics, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But then like I also like to entertain that idea, you know. Maybe it's true to a certain degree, you know. And I prefer to think that it's just like society in general, like it's just being still into society and it's being learned and it still like floats in the atmosphere, you know, like those ways of treating women and how women should behave and men and all that. I think it's more society, but you know, I wonder if there's something to it, like maybe it goes like skin deep into DNA and genetics.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I kind of have like a hard time convincing myself that we are like bound by genetics. That I feel like first is almost like what's going on like our mind. Or first, I feel like it's like somehow we are at power first, and then kind of like genetics comes in, because I feel like genetics is almost like the ultimate like get out of jail like free card of, oh, this is
Mm-hmm.
why you're fucked because your genes are shit. And then what the hell can you do about that? You just kind of you just kind of like walked yourself into a hole. But I think then the other funny thing about that is that we are so convinced that we know so much about history, but we don't know shit. We have
Mm,
no idea what happened like 2,000 years ago. We have maybe like some books or some scrolls, but who knows if those books or those scrolls, are the equivalent of 50 Shades of Grey today. That they are not representative of what's going on, or maybe they are representative of what's going on. But maybe it just goes back to that, how do you define what is fiction and nonfiction? Then how do you do that for everything that you find from the past?
man, also passing on the history, it's very hard to do because just think about it. 2,000 years ago, we maybe wrote down the most important things that happened. But what about the perspective of the, let's say there was an orator giving a speech, and what about the perspective of the little kid that brought him water and a towel, for
Mm-hmm.
example? What
Mm-hmm.
was his perspective? How did he see this whole situation? Or the guy in the crowd, or the guy who was being outside homeless, or the perspective of somebody like living in the wild, not being part of society, or the guy who was crippled, not able to work, or you know what I mean? Like there's so many different. But we wrote just like one thing down, and that also very limited because at the same day that, let's say somebody wrote down that speech, what with the fucking crowd with the 50,000 people, or
Mm-hmm.
this is just a number now, let's say like 500 people, um how did that impact their lives? Did they go and change their lives? Did they go do start thinking about the future too? So it's very limiting. Like the what we have about the past is basically nothing.
Yeah. And somehow we've still created these like stories, or these narratives in which there's a group of people that have always been oppressed throughout history, even though we're like we don't have enough information to confirm that. So it almost feels like, going back to that idea that the world, or what was it, the quote that I sent you guys the other day, that uh,
When you look,
if you
Perspective.
if
when
you
you
look
change the way.
if you change the way you look at things, you look at the things you look at change or something like that.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe when we started looking at history or at that history in like through the eyes of present time, we were like, oh man, I wonder if these people also like oppressed certain groups like we're doing now. And then of course that's what they found because that's what they were looking for when they were looking at
Mm.
history. So they kind of like skip over things that don't make that reference. In fact, now that I'm saying that, I was hearing something recently that was that uh actually like there's no proof that at any point in history humanity was convinced that the earth was flat. And you know how that's like a really popular idea that like
Yeah,
Columbus
yeah,
went out to prove that he wasn't going to fall off the edge of the planet. But
yeah. That's
they
why.
like a lot of people believe that historians just fucked it up because if you looked at it seriously, you would realize that many years before Columbus was even born, we knew about the stars and we knew about the planets, and we knew that the reason there was an eclipse was because the shadow of the earth or the moon like were like blocking each other, and you were looking at round shadows. And the way that the we figured the orbits worked only worked if the objects in orbit were round. And so we had all that shit figured out, and then somehow we managed to convince everyone in present day that everyone in the past was like really fucking stupid or something, and that they somehow figured out that everything was round, but then they forgot or something, that they just
They
dismissed it.
forgot.
Even though at the same time, and it's like this like strange idea that it's almost like multiple histories. We also teach the history of like the Greeks and the Romans, and all the like leaps and bounds that they made in science and understanding. And then we're like, oh, but then and then nothing happened. We just kind of we made no big progress or something in all these things.
I think that you highlight a point there though, that is like history is still subjective,
Mm-hmm.
to the person that writes it, and the power that writes it, and how much history was just shifted and changed. And it's just different because if somebody, like if an Italian person from 1,000 years ago writes something, it's gonna be totally different than an Italian person that writes it now. I don't know why I say Italian. Maybe I was thinking Greeks or Romans or something. But
Columbus.
like, okay,
Columbus
okay,
is
maybe
Italian.
I'm in
Maybe
the
I think
ballpark.
that's.
I'm in
Saved.
the ballpark. So yeah, woo, woo. So like, and we could try to interpret history from so many years ago, but it's still just an interpretation, and we
Mm-hmm.
can't expect it to be anywhere close to the interpretation that we want. Now you really have to extract like something from it, and I would say that when we read history, like very very old history, how much of the percentage that you're reading, you're just adding it yourself, because really, like,
Right.
how can
Right.
you get that information
And
unpolluted and uncontaminated?
and most things we just guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just guess, man. Even when we find artifacts, we just like we assume, oh, we find this little whatever like triangle thing, and we think there might have had some important role, when in real fact there was just like a way to block the door. Just you know, like, oh, to keep the door open or whatever, and so like, but like after like because it's really well preserved, and people think like who found it, like they must have had like a really important role to play. Maybe not, whatever, So like there's like a lot of room for misinterpretation.
Everybody had one, so it must be like a god that they pray to. No, everybody has
A notebook.
chairs at their house these days.
Oh
so-
man, that'd be or doors. They have like
or doors.
like a species comes like years after we go extinct, and they're like, holy shit, He must have praised these things that move sideways. Some seem to move like in themselves. Wow, you know.
And some of them vanished into the walls, and then they came out again. Was the magic. But to be honest, I think now we live at a time where future archaeologists, they're gonna have like a really easy time to decipher the world that we're living out now, because we leave so much recording back, all the vlogging, all the podcasts, man. We basically like we documented like every bullshit.
But then I think that might be the
Instagram.
issue then, that we have recorded so much stuff that is incoherent, like if you compare it to itself, like, because everyone would have different ideas and all that, that when people,
Mm-hmm.
like, when a species comes back and it's like like combing through the internet to figure out where we were, they'd be like, holy shit, what the fuck is going on here? Like, what are all these
Yeah.
things? What is this, like? There's people who believe in this, like, in the gods of doors, and then there are these other people who believe in these, like, gods of avengers that save the planet and save them
Yeah.
from, like, other aliens, and all these things, I think it would just make it more confusing.
Like there's this podcast that's one of the most famous one named Car Talk, where people talk about cars, and then there's these guys talking about sentient cars taking their jobs.
Yeah.
It's like, what is reality?
So maybe the purpose of all that we're doing at this day and age is that we're playing a really big game and a really long game of confusing whatever comes after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Just
this is
fucking them
this
up.
is our age, the age of confusion.
Oh, for
I like how
sure,
that sounds.
for sure,
But
for
then, Darko,
sure.
the other thing I was thinking is similar to like what you're saying of the person giving the speech, and you don't get to hear the story of everyone who's like listening to it. Like, the example I was thinking is, of modern day would be like Trump making a speech, and you don't get to hear the stories of everyone who's sitting at home watching, or people who are there at the by Darko. I,
Wow, that's so rude.
I um, and now he's back.
You just keep on talking, man. Like, don't mind me. I'm gonna listen to everything after when I edit it.
So, so what I was saying is that,
I just
kind of
dial
going from
out.
your idea that, there's someone making a speech, and then you don't get to hear the story of the listeners. I was thinking, what would that imply in an example like Trump, or modern day, like, politics everywhere, where you have this politician who is somehow the representative of humanity, but then if you looked at the rest of humanity, you would get maybe like a different picture.
Mm, right, right. Whew. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
It's too much. It's too much, man. At least for my brain.
that's reality, I
Yeah,
guess. Maybe.
and it's just, and the thing that you said, like, that for people that come after us, they're gonna look at our things that we have, man. They're gonna think, that we had a war about a ring, and that we had like two heroes that.
And then they're gonna be confused, like, wait, but when did the dragons came and the White Walkers? And they're gonna be, no, 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 that's at another moment.
Right, right, right. They go super confused, man. And then and then what? There was like AI that took over, and then they had to fight, against Terminators, and then there was also like Rocky who fought like Ivan Drago.
you know you know what makes all this funnier? It's how all those things did not happen in order. How, you have like a future in which there are like flying cars, and then there's like a war for like a ring, and people no longer even know what the heck cars are. and then they're in the future and they're getting like destroyed by AI, and then suddenly like it's dragons, and they're back to like sword fighting. So people are gonna be like,
Zombies.
what was going on here?
This planet is crazy.
Boxing, man. Don't forget boxing. Boxing.
And the boxing, on top of all that, war and dragons, there were two guys fighting and the whole nation stood up for that,
Yeah, and
Stop just for this battle.
yeah, and then the battle of the universe happened on planet Earth.
And like 50% of the universe
Reality.
got like destroyed.
Yeah, and they're like, fuck, they had to go through all that shit. And they're like,
And then
"What?"
because there's I was watching a trailer recently, and then there happened this story of a dog that died and then came back as another dog and found the same family, and so they just like fell in love with the dog again, and it's like what's going on here, guys?
I have no idea
They're
what
like-
you're talking about right now.
It's a movie about
It's a real movie.
yeah,
You
it's
just
a movie
make
about
it up.
no, it's a movie about like a dog that just comes back in another life, essentially as another dog to the same family.
Because it really sounds like you just made it up.
No, dude, there's
Just to
like
fuck
I'm
up.
pretty sure there's even like
Sounds
more than
amazing.
one movie about this.
What, more than
Oh my
one?
goodness. So you were talking about Detective Pikachu.
And then
Now in
then
theaters.
Detective Pikachu happens.
I
Yeah.
have to watch that. I really have to watch that.
That's our history. What can we say?
Yeah, man.
So, guys, how about we wrap it up for this
Yep.
time? Maybe. So, this has been officially Casually, my friends.
All right.
Thank you for listening.
Take care, guys.
It's been great. Nobody's gonna say anything else. Darko just went. Wow, he really took it serious.
And my internet died, so
Rafa's internet just died. Darko's
Like,
internet is crazy.
oh,
And then
Rafa's
yeah,
back.
that leaves me. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, please tell your friends to subscribe and click on our links to give us some money. With
just keep clicking on the link.
Just click on that link like there's nothing better to do in this life.
Okay. Okay, hear you next week.
Click on
All right, guys, take care.
See you next week. Love you all. Bye bye.
Growing small